Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Happy St. Patrick's Day to you, and welcome into the Sports Source here in the Junk Be Gone studios. Appreciate you for joining us on this March 17th. We have much to discuss. It's Selection Sunday, always one of my favorite days of the year. Unfortunately, there are some ugly numbers that we have to tackle when it comes to tournament time. That makes it not as much fun as it used to be, but we'll still tackle all those numbers. We'll talk about what's gone wrong for Tennessee in the last 2 weeks to undo 30 games worth of positivity. We'll discuss it, and we'll get into a lot of other things. We'll take a look at all the bracket projections, give you Tennessee's path to redemption. All that coming up in today's show. Let's get it started. First segment of this show brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone, the best company in all of Tennessee when it comes to helping you de-mess your home, your attic, your basement, or your yard. You want rid of it? They'll haul it away. Junk Be Gone. I use them every year. I'll be using them here in a few weeks. They do terrific work. JunkBeGone.biz for you to learn more. We appreciate all of our sponsors today bringing you this Selection Sunday show. We may be a little quick on the in-show mentions for that reason. All right, let's welcome in the panel. You can go ahead and turn it off. It's okay. No, best to grab it and turn it off now before it beeps again. Hello. We got Jimmy Hines right here. We got Will West right here. We got breaking tournament news coming right in to Mark Pancratz. And we got Chuck Cavaleris right there. All right. As I said, the brackets are starting to be put together. Let's go ahead and show you. This morning, Joe Lunardi, as of 8:30 this morning, which is when I have to make these graphics, Joe Lunardi had Tennessee as a 2 seed in the Midwest. First round games would be, the first and second round would be in Charlotte. Regional would be in Detroit, all right? Now, as of 8:30 a.m., and I knew he'd change it after I put the graphics away, Jerry Palm had Tennessee as the #2 seed in the South going to Dallas. He's changed that. He posted a new bracket just a little while ago. We'll run through that later, but he has them as a 2 seed in the Midwest now. Both Lunardi and Jerry Palm have Tennessee going to Detroit as a #2 in the Midwest, where the #1 seed will be Purdue. And over on the right is the bracket matrix breakdown. That is basically a mishmash of 102 online brackets. Wow. They take everybody's brackets and mash them together. And you see that Tennessee is the top #2 seed according to bracket matrix. Now, that was as of 8:30 this morning. A lot of people are pushing Iowa State farther and farther up this list. Marquette has been moved ahead of Tennessee on some lists, so we'll discuss all of that. But let's get into the main thing first of all, and that is what's gone wrong with Tennessee in the last week. They were hanging a banner a week ago. All was well. They lose to Kentucky, and you could say, okay, it wasn't pretty, but you won 3 of your last 4 against the 4 best teams in the conference. You've beaten teams this year with offense. You've beaten them with defense. You've beaten them when Connect's gone off. You've pulled together and won on the road when Connect didn't have a good game. You've done all this stuff. Even the Kentucky game, you came back, fought your way into it. Then Mississippi State happens. You got a 2-game losing streak. It looked like you didn't even want to be there. The bottom has fallen out of this fan base. People are outraged, as we will show you mean tweets later. Mark, is this a 2-game blip? It happens this time of year. Houston got crushed yesterday. Kentucky, South Carolina, Alabama, they all got blown out of the SEC tournament. Is this just a blip, or is this a sign of a team in a tailspin?
Well, I think both of those are an extreme. I don't think it's a blip, and I don't think it's a tailspin. I think there is cause for concern.
Well, I'm going to make you say one or the other.
I think, our offense has gotten stagnant. You go back and look at the games that we've won, even the last 5 games, our shooting percentage is below. And so teams are starting to figure us out a little bit. We're becoming more stagnant. We don't have guys that can drive to the basket and finish at the rim outside of Connect and Ziegler. So now what teams are doing, and Coach Jans talked about after Mississippi State, they stayed huggied on everybody else and are going to make guys finish at the rim. And who can do that consistently? Connect looks a little bit tired getting to the basket all the time because on the other side, teams are making him defend.
Yeah.
And now they're wearing him down by him guarding, and then they're making him finish at the rim. And offensively, we're just become really stagnant, becoming more one-on-one. Because of our play calls, but two, I think it's because of what the defenses are doing to us and making us be more one-on-one oriented.
Yeah, and they've been jump and connect, right, with that double and triple teams. The Mississippi State, that was a great game plan, wasn't it? Going to pound it inside. That's Tennessee's weakness to me, is the post defense. You don't have anybody really behind to do that can help you. And when you struggle to play defense, you struggle to shoot the ball and play offense, you're going to struggle to win. That's what Tennessee's going through right now. And I think it reminds me a little bit, I think you'll hear about the classic players-only team meeting. You're going to go back to like you did before the Kentucky game at Kentucky. You're going to air some grievances, and you're going to try and figure things out.
I think they've been building to this for a while. I think if you look at the last 5 games, they haven't shot better than 35% beyond the arc. 4 of those games, 30% or worse. 33-pointers or more attempted in each of those games. They shot 30% or worse. Mark's been talking about this for months. Get back to the ball screen offense. And I think that's the thing you have to do, because otherwise you're setting yourself up to be a jump shooting team. Your weakness is that you're jump shooting, right? It's like having me show off my abs, right? That's the weakest point we have. So
please don't do that.
We won't. I promise you, Joey. But it's just, I don't understand why Tennessee's been playing to their weaknesses. And it's the old John Madden line: winning's a great deodorant. You've been winning, but you've been shooting worse and worse and worse, and guys are standing around more and more and more. And now the chickens have come home to roost, in my opinion.
I don't think it's only the shooting. The defense concerns me.
Yeah.
Mississippi State shot 61.5% in the first half, 55% for the game. Kentucky shot over 50% on threes. So while the offense has tailed off, so has the defense. Why? A lot of theories out there. But
yeah, we'll probably talk about something.
And Chuck, you mentioned the inside scoring, which is a problem. The dribble drive is also a problem for Tennessee's defense.
Right. The thing that was bothersome to me, and I was at the game on Friday, was we lack toughness. Like we've talked about the toughness, and I'm not even talking about some of it the physicality standpoint of defending the post, the toughness of Adu getting on that block, and rather than fading away and falling away on some of your shots, getting it to the rim. You look at Tolu Smith, you look at Broome at Auburn, all these big guys, they're backing people down and getting to the rim, and we're falling away more. Yeah. Right. And then the other mental toughness of it, end of the half against Mississippi State, and Connect throws that ball away, and it leads to a basket at the other end, and now you're down 19. And yeah, that seems small, but when you cut it to, what, 10 or 11, that number now is in the single digits. Yeah. It's those mental toughness things that you're looking at. Like, what are we?
One play I remember was a 5-point swing. And to say this last thing, I know we're all going to be talking about this. If you don't get James and Vescovi going, you can't afford them to have them go 1 of 11 from the field and James go scoreless.
We'll have some numbers on that later.
Right. I mean, you just look at it, and then I had a dude was doing the fadeaways. Awaka was falling down. I mean, it's just, you can just go on and on and on about what problems were, and you can get them corrected, but you just can't keep playing the way you are.
Well, here's the thing that bothers me. I mean, you're talking about it's been coming for a while. We've seen it coming for a while. Didn't they win 7 straight before Kentucky?
They had the second longest winning streak in high major basketball behind Houston.
So to me, that's where I chalk some of this up to basketball. Don't freak. I think we're freaking out more over this because of who the head coach is and his tournament record than we would be. Again, you look around we're going to show you a little later, UConn, some of their championship runs. Terrible at the end of the season. Hit the tournament, good to go. I don't think anybody here at Tennessee has much hope that, oh yeah, Rick Barnes will get it fixed in March. That's typically not when he gets it fixed. But in terms of they've been declining for a while. Well, it hasn't shown up in the win-loss record. I'm not saying
winning's a great deodorant, right? So
well, yeah, but
it covers up the stink that's been building and building and building the last 4 or 5 games. I'm saying this since Monday, right? Like
since Monday.
I have been saying this since Monday. Well, that's what I went through the stats and looked at.
Well, I know. I'm just saying.
I was like,
we haven't spent the last 2 months here talking about how this team's bad. They're going to fall apart. It's not a good basketball team. We've been saying the opposite. Maybe that's my fault. I lead the discussion. I should have been saying how awful this team is.
Well, they're awful, but they're struggling.
I would rather win and not apply any deodorant. But Tennessee, I mean, to win at Alabama the way they did, and they showed, I thought, toughness there. They have had moments where they've shown toughness. Boy, they didn't show it against Mississippi State. We talked earlier this season about the thing that's impressive about this team is now you've got a guy. You don't know if it's going to be Vescovi, James, or Gainey, but we would say this because this week, Gainey would come out with 15 points out of nowhere and win the game. Vescovy would score 15. James would score. That's stopped now.
Well, that's where I think you look at the X's and O's side of it, where coaches have looked at how to beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
Is they're not helping off of the main guys, Adu, Connect, and Ziegler. They're not helping off those guys. And now you're going to make Vescovy, Josiah, Gainey have to go make one-on-one plays and finish. And that's just not their MO. And now they've been playing with a little bit less confidence. Vescovy's shot fake and driving it left when he's just turning down an easier shot to get a harder shot.
Yeah.
And I think coaches have now seen it. Now the question of that
turning down open shots is a whole other issue.
Yeah. And now the question of it is, can a SEC coach who watches and scouts these teams all the time, do they transfer over that scouting report to somebody that has maybe 3 days to prepare? So now when you're playing against opponents that don't know that about you as quickly, that's where we can get back to what we were and that offense scoring 89, 90 points and being able to spread it around more.
It's interesting. Again, if we had done this show following the win at South Carolina, we're not sitting here going on and on and on about all the issues.
But, John, you made
it's 2 games later and
after
the bottom's
South
falling
Carolina
out. And I'm not debating that. It has fallen out.
You made a point after the South Carolina game about their poor three-point shooting. South Carolina, they kept shooting them, kept shooting them, kept shooting them. What if they would have had the Mississippi State game plan? What if we said, hey, well, these aren't falling? I don't think you beat South Carolina in that game.
All right, we got to tell you what's coming up. We're already over. This is good. This is the way I like the show. All right, coming up today on the show, we will talk about how can Barnes be so mad in March. He's a good coach. How can he be so awful in March? And if you don't believe me, we'll show you the facts. Pancratz will get his plan on how to fix the Vols. Bracket paths and projections. UT's most likely cause of exit when they do exit the NCAA tournament. We got mean tweets. We haven't done that in a while. All apologies to Jimmy Kimmel. We'll do our version of mean tweets. UT and NCAA tournament history for you. And then we'll make our predictions. How far will Tennessee go? We'll see how many people are still talking Elite Eight by the time we get to today's end of the show. When we come back, let's keep this discussion going. Plus, we'll take a look at the difference between Tennessee in wins and Tennessee in losses. What does it tell us? Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. Nudura, Drive It, Cultured Stone. When it comes to cutting-edge building materials, A.G. Hines Company covers the best. They carry the best. Tops in East Tennessee, and they have been for more than a century. Find out why construction companies and do-it-yourselfers alike all start their projects at A.G. Hines Company. You should, too, right in downtown Knoxville on Hines Street, naturally. aghines.com to learn more. All right, let's welcome in the next two members of our panel right here. Ryan Callahan, thank you for joining us. Right over here, Vince Ferrara. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Sean.
I want to take a look at some numbers here. We're going to discuss, you guys jump in. If a discussion takes off, great. If not, if you just have a point to make, just make it. We'll either stay with the graphic or we'll come back to us. Mark, you've seen some of these numbers, so you got the advantage. All right, here we go. Too reliant on Connect. Everybody's been talking about, are they too reliant on Connect? If you take that to mean, yes, if he doesn't score enough, you lose, then no, they're not. They're 13-3 when he scores under 20. They're 7-2. When he scores under 15, that's not a team that's doomed when he doesn't perform. However, last month or so, I think the last few weeks, I think you could look at it and now ask, are they too reliant the other way? In other words, if he's scoring too much, is that where they get in trouble? Let's continue looking at these numbers, and you'll know why I foreshadowed that. Three-point shooting for Tennessee. Here they are in their 8 losses. 67 made threes of 239. They're shooting 28% in their 8 losses. All right, and they attempt 30 threes a game in their losses. In their 24 wins, they're attempting only 24 threes a game, so 6 less, and they're hitting 36.7. That's not terrible. That's not terrible from 3. Any thoughts, or keep going?
Well, I think it goes back to our offense gets more stagnant in losses, and I think that's why you end up shooting deeper shots, you shoot contested shots, you shoot late in the clock shots, as opposed to when we're playing free-flowing offense, we're playing transition, you're getting better opportunity, better opportunistic three-pointers.
They're getting in the paint, too.
Yeah.
When you shoot less threes, it's just higher percentage overall. That's their best when Adu is engaged, when they're aggressive, and they're scoring on both levels.
Glad you said that. Let's take a look at these next graphics. This is points per game in their wins versus their losses. All right, I just went with the big 6 guys. In wins, you see that when it goes from wins to losses, Gainey's scoring drops 1.2 per game, not huge. Vescovy falls off 2.7. James is the big drop. He drops about 4 points per game in losses. Ziegler, about the same. Adu, -2. Connect goes up 5 points in losses. They rely on Connect. It's like, okay, nobody else is doing anything. Yeah. Here you go, hero, go get them. And then let's look at field goal attempts in wins versus losses. The next graphic, if we can get that up there. There we go. Gainey's shots go up in losses. Vescovi's shots go up in losses. Ziegler's shots, he got 3 more shots a game in losses. Connect, 4.5 more shots a game. James, just down a little. Adu down almost 4 shots a game in losses, which I think speaks to what you're talking about. And then let's throw in the last one just to get these graphics out of the way. Here are the big 6 in wins versus losses. Everybody talks about, Chuck brought it up. We've talked about it on this show, Vescovi, sorry. Vescovi and James scored 94 points combined in Tennessee's 8 losses. Okay, looks bad, but here's the percentage thing. This is interesting. In wins, Gainey, James, and Vescovi average about 28% of Tennessee's points. In losses, where Tennessee averages 13 points less per game in their losses, in those losses, Gainey, James, and Vescovi average about 25% of the points. Not a huge switch there. But look at Adu, Connect, and Ziegler. In wins, they're about 53% of the points. In losses, they're about 68% of your scoring in losses. So it's your bench guys, not necessarily just Gainey, James, and Vescovi. It's your bench guys that disappear in those losses. Does that mean less minutes for those guys? And you're sticking with your starters more? Either way, you still need those guys, your veteran leaders especially. Vescovi and James, guys who came back specifically for this, you need them to start picking up slack. When you look at that number, to me, that stands out. The fact 53% of your points when they win goes to those 3 guys. 68% what they lose, that's not good.
Well, I've been saying it all year that it's those other 3 guys. The Adu, the Ziegler, the Connect, those are your guys. This team is going to go as far as the other 3, the Gaineys, the Zieglers, the Josiahs. What can they bring from the table? And now what teams are doing to us is they're staying hugged up on penetration, and they're making those guys, they're already pretty one-dimensional. Vescovi's a catch-and-shoot guy. He's not going to get all the way to the rim and finish.
And he's never looked comfortable this year with this offense.
Correct. Josiah's a more catch-and-shoot now. He may get to a middle pull-up jump shot, but he's not getting all the way to the rim. Gainey's a catch-and-shoot guy. And so they're staying huggy and making Ziegler, making Connect finish at the rim, playing Adu one-on-one, and leaving those guys to be standstill shooters. And if they're not shooting the ball well, it's a long night.
And what's concerning to me is the trend, because Gainey's not done much, and it's been more than a month.
He's dropped off.
That he had a double-digit scoring performance. Vescovi has hit more than 1 field goal in 3 of the last 11 games. You got to get more from those guys. So and that's the concern is how do you? I mean, you've got other guys you could give those minutes to. I wonder, do you potentially shake things up? More Meshack, more Gainey, to at least attempt to do something different, because I don't think there's any signs of a reversal of that trend with Vescovi.
It's a tough time to be making those kind of changes.
Well, with Josiah and Vescovi, they do so much of cleaning up on the defensive end. They make the extra pack. They make their hustle play guys. The one nice thing about Gainey is, and some people don't like it, he's not going to turn down a shot. And sometimes with offense, like if I'm the best player and I create an open shot for you and to shoot it and you don't shoot it, I'm looking at you like, man, what are you doing? Shoot the ball. And then at least it gives you guys a chance, which we got against Mississippi State, a ton of offensive rebounds that we just didn't capitalize on.
We talked earlier this year when Connect was first going off. We said, is this team going to sit there and watch one guy? Or are they just going to rely on hero ball? And they didn't for most of the season. They didn't. The numbers show they didn't. Last couple of weeks, they seem to be not wanting to take the shot. Let's just let Connect go and do something. Vince, I want to close with you. We've got to keep it short. I'm sorry. Sure. But we said last week on the show, after the Kentucky loss, could this be a good loss? If it, you pay attention, you go, you know what? We could lose to this. Barnes goes in there and grinds them, teaches them, hey, man, don't go in feeling good about yourself. We said, yes, it could be. And then I saw Jonas Adu's quote after the game, which disgusted me, bothered me. He made the quote to you. When you were in Nashville, you asked him, what did he say?
Yeah, he was the first guy I went to in the locker room. They opened it up, and maybe he said it to other people too. Right. But he said that, hey, we thought we were just going to come in here and win this game. Like, really?
In other words, a Kentucky game just in one ear, out the other.
Yeah, I mean, I understand looking big picture, hey, we won the SEC, but that team beat you. So where's the pride and revenge to want to get back at them? Oh, by the way, you have an opportunity to do something special and win both regular season and SEC. So that surprised me. I don't know that everybody had that same feeling, But he said that's what they thought.
Here's what Jans told me after the game. Coach Jans from Mississippi State said, our whole goal was to punch them in the mouth early because we knew we'd get them on the heels, and now they'd be playing worried. They'd play concerned. They played hesitant. Well, welcome to the NCAA tournament because now, no matter where you go, you're the higher seed. You're going to have that whole arena wanting that upset, wanting that Cinderella. So if you get punched early in the mouth in the first round, it's going to be a long game because the rest of that crowd's going to be cheering against you.
Very good. Hey, I appreciate it. When we come back, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about how a really good coach for the regular season can become a bad coach in the postseason. You may not like hearing that, but the reason you say somebody's a good coach is the record. So if the record's not good, you have to say, yeah, it's a bad coach this time of year. It is what it is. What's up with Rick Barnes in March? Let's discuss. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. For the best place to stay in the Smokies this spring, this summer, or this fall, visit ParksideCabinRentals.com today. Scan the floor plans, descriptions, photos of all their cabins. Find the one that is perfect for your needs. This isn't like picking a hotel where every room looks the same. No. Parkside Cabin Rentals, you get a whole place designed just for you. ParksideCabinRentals.com. All right, time for our poll question today. Let's go ahead and pop that thing in. The poll question is, simply, we want to know how far you think Tennessee's going to go in the NCAA tournament. Some of you have already gotten in and voted on our website last night, but you can take your smartphone, click that little QR code, vote, or you can go to sportsource.tv/polls and vote there. But you tell us, how far is Tennessee going to go? First round, second round, Sweet 16, Elite 8, or Final Four? 5 choices. You tell us what wins. It looks like from here, Sweet 16 seems to be the leader at the moment. We'll keep track of that. Please play along because this stuff's always interesting to me. I just like knowing what people think. All right, let me show you some numbers. We're going to talk about Rick Barnes here. I want to get this out of the way. This is brutal. Now, look, what you've got, I didn't know what it was going to turn out. I didn't want to go back through every coach who ever played, but I wanted coaches who are in the Rick Barnes zone. So what I did was I went and looked up all the coaches who've got 700 wins who are either still active or retired in the last 5 years. So, no, Henry, Iba, and Adolph Rupp are not on the list. But you got 15 guys. I know that everybody compares him to Pearl, so I put Pearl on there. He's in red, even though Pearl hasn't coached that long, doesn't have 700 wins. Now, it shows you how many NCAA tournaments each of these guys coached in. It shows you how many times they lost in the first round plus, meaning if they lost in a play-in game. Lost in the second round, lost in the Sweet 16, lost in the Elite 8, or made the Final Four plus. Means just making the Final Four. You may have lost in the title game, may have won the title, whatever. That means making it. You got 2 things over on the far right. Look over there, reached Final Four percentage. That's how many times of your tournaments, and what percentage of those tournament trips you've made it to the Final Four. You go down to the bottom of that list, and there's Cliff Ellis. Now, he's got 700 wins, but he's only been to 10 tournaments. He's never made a Final Four. The next worst on this list, Rick Barnes, 27 tournaments. He's made 1 Final Four. That is a percentage of 3.7%. All right, now you look up Krzyzewski, 36% of the time. Izzo, 32% of the time. Patino, 30%. Now, Bruce Pearl's only at 8%, but he's got a shorter career, so a win for him will change those numbers more. All right, so Rick Barnes is at the bottom of the list in terms of these great coaches when it comes to reaching the Final Four. Look at the category next to that. Pre-Sweet 16 exits. Nope, let's go back to that graphic, please, if we could. Can we go back to the last graphic? There we go. Pre-Sweet 16 exits. It's the next to the last category. At the bottom of the list, again, you got Cliff Ellis down there at 70%. But worst is 70.3%. That's Rick Barnes. 70%, more than 70% of the time, he's out before the Sweet 16. 27 NCAA trips, 19 times he's been out in the first or second round. And I just noticed something today. Bruce Pearl's down there too, but Bob Huggins, look at Bob Huggins' numbers compared to Rick Barnes. It's almost, they're very similar. And those are 2 guys I would never consider to be similar in anything. So in terms of, I think Rick Barnes is Bob Huggins with a halo. He's the good Bob Huggins. He's the one that doesn't embarrass your school. But in terms of these great coaches, he's basically the worst about making the Sweet 16 and the worst about making a Final Four. Now, let's take a look at him by month, okay? Here we go. There's their record this year. It's in the far left column. That's what their record was by month this year. And then in the middle is what their record's been, what his team's records have been over the last 17 seasons. I went back to 2008, his last Elite 8 trip. And then you get the winning percentages. 787 in November, 787 December, 618 January, drops to 598 in February, drops to 562 in March. I put this on Twitter. We've done this before, but I put it on Twitter, mistake. And people started barking that, well, of course, dummy, everybody loses in March. It's tougher. Well, let's take a look. I wanted to find the next two coaches. Go ahead and flip it. I wanted to find the two closest two coaches that are closest to Barnes. Well, that's Bill Self and John Calipari. 803 wins, 805 wins, 813. And, yeah, they win 70% of their games in March. So when I put up a number on Twitter, I'm not just pulling it out of thin air. It means something. What you see with Barnes compared to his peers is he's winning 58% of his games in March. That's an 8% drop-off from what he normally does. These other guys that are right around him, 72%, that's a 4% drop-off from what? So there's a drop. It's half as much as what Barnes has. Okay, I've got all the numbers out there. Here's the question. Jimmy Hyams, I'll start with you, and we'll have to be kind of quick. Why is a coach that's so good in the regular season so bad in March?
I called multiple coaches through the years and two recently, and the common thread was they feel like Rick Barnes practices his team too hard late in the year, and it's not just the physical part. They also spend too much time on film study, the combination. One coach told me that Bob Knight, instead of having 2-hour practices, would practice 1 hour. Film study would be cut from 1 hour to 30 minutes. So that's what the prevailing opinion was, that his teams get tired late in the year, mentally and physically, because of the practice and the film sessions.
And we brought this stat up before. This year, they're 290th out of 350 teams, 360 teams in terms of bitch minutes. So in addition to mental and practice fatigue, you're also getting a lot of wear and tear on your starters this year. Will West, your thoughts?
I think that Rick Barnes, we all know what he's going to do. We know what his tendencies are. I think if you and I know, then literally every coach in college basketball probably knows, and there isn't a lot of adjustment. I also think he does too much. Last year in the FAU game, if you remember, at about the 11-minute mark, right after the under 12 timeout, he puts in 5 guys and none of them could score. 80 was the leading scorer of the 5 that were out there. It was like 80, Key, and a bunch of bench guys. Like, it doesn't make any sense what he's doing. Kind of like when Zakai got in foul trouble in the first half against Kentucky. You put a kid that's been out there 13 minutes in the entire year of 2024. I think he does too much as far as trying to tinker with his lineup, and I think he also has tendencies he will not get away from at times.
Mark?
Yeah, I agree with all that. He has adapted over the years, and I think that's why you've seen some progression in his program of getting to a #1 team in the country or being a top 5 team in the country consistently. I think he has progressed in that. But Jimmy hit on one part of it. It's not just the physical toll. Like, he'll go over there and practices will be shorter, but it's the mental side of being able to get away from the game for a little bit. I mean, they have what's called vitamins, and they go in and outside of practice, they get a certain amount of shots up, or they get their treatment in, and it's great. Like, it's all encompassing, but they got school, they got other things going on, and it's just, I think, mentally it can wear on you.
I also wonder, and I'm guessing you guys would disagree, but I've talked to enough people who played for Philip Fulmer to know that when Florida Week came around, a different mood hit that facility, because he got tight, everybody else got tight. People who played for Johnny Majors, same thing, only with Alabama. When it was Bama Week, he got tight, team got tight, facilities felt like it was caving in. I just think these guys know. They know what's on social media. They know what's being said. Either A, they pucker up a little bit because they know what his track record is, or B, and I think this is probably a bigger part of it, when you see those guys cry at the end of tournaments and stuff, I think they press because they want to be the team that reverses that for him. I do. I think there's part of it may be tired. I think part of it may be they're pressing or puckering a little bit simply because they know what their coach is carrying into the tournament.
Can't rule that out. Cannot rule that out. I will say to your point about Majors and Fulmer and those schools, you had players on those teams that said Majors and Fulmer would get tight for those particular games.
Yeah, and it would filter out into the players.
I don't think that's Barnes' MO. I don't think he presses. I think he's
I think the players press
because they feel Barnes
because they want to help
pressure.
him. No, I think they know his record is what I'm saying. I think they know, and it makes them, oh boy, here we go. This isn't good. He doesn't do well in March, and when we're losing in March, I think a game can get away from you. I also think they fight like hell to be the team that corrects that for him. That's my take, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just think Barnes is who he is.
Yeah, he doesn't change.
And he's not going to change, which is a good thing, but also it's when you're pressing that much in November on him, and then it's just 6-month season, it can kind of wear on you.
I get what you're saying. What I was trying to say, and I didn't say it clear, when it comes to Fulmer and Majors, their mood trickled out. What I'm saying is, in the same way that trickles out to players, I think his record trickles out to play. I think players, what I'm getting at is, players have a better feel for what's going on than I think people give them credit to. And I think they typically either pucker up or press a little. Just a theory.
They watch your show, so I'm sure they know what's going on.
There is
well,
a
if
different,
they watch for you.
There is a different level right now of student athletes in Tennessee hearing about things and hearing from classmates about things than I have ever seen in 17 years doing this.
All right. When we come back, only one of us on the panel has played D1 or coached D1. So let's ask Mark Pancratz to fix everything. How does he fix the Vols and get everything rolling again for the tournament? We'll get that next. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. Won't be long till you hear that buzz. Then you'll be scratching those bites. You know what I'm talking about. Mosquitoes. Call Southeast Termite and Pest Control about their new mosquito treatment. It's more effective for you and less impactful on all the good insects in your yard. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, southeasttermite.com. I use these guys. You will be a happy camper if you use them as well. Southeast Termite and Pest Control. All right. Back over here at our special little one-on-one table, because it's a special segment. I want to know, Mark Pancratz, we're handing you, I'm not going to hand you $6 million like Rick Barnes, but I'm going to hand you the coach's wipey board, and I'm going to let you fix the Vols. What do you do?
So first and foremost, the first play call that I'm running is I'm going to run an action that is going to require Connect to get the ball to somebody else for an open, easy opportunity. I want Connect to get others involved early, or Zakai, others involved early. So through scouting, you can figure out how are they going to guard that ball screen action, knowing that they're going to probably, whether they jump it or they switch it, whatever they're going to do, and you're going to educate those guys, whether it's Connect or Ziegler, on how am I going to get Josiah, how am I going to get Vescovy an open opportunity, and let them know when that's coming to you, you're shooting it. And get those guys going, because we got to get those other 3 guys involved, because then that opens up the floor for everybody else, as opposed to Connect, Ziegler, get going first, and then try to open up. I'd go the opposite.
In terms of drastic fixes, there are, people are bench this guy, bench that guy, change this, change that. It's awfully late in the season to be making drastic changes based off what's really one horrible look in the SEC tournament game. The Kentucky loss, you lost. It wasn't pretty, but it was a 4-point game. Hard for me to say, well, you've been bombed 2 weeks in a row. You're horrible. So do you make drastic changes at this point in the year based off a short sample of losing after 30 games of goodness?
Yeah. No, you don't do anything drastic. I think I'd be interested to see what they do with Meshack, his involvement in it, because he's so good defensively versus Gainey. But I think when the rest of the town is getting negative on you, coaching staff has to come around and show, hey, look, here's all the good stuff that you guys have been doing. Here's what this program has been all year, and get their confidence back up, because, look, they're getting inundated with family members, with friends, with classmates, with all these people asking, like, what in the world's going on? And as a coaching staff, you need to fuel that confidence.
See, to me, it's interesting when you hear what Adu said after the Mississippi State game. Well, we thought we'd come here and win. This is after you lost to Kentucky. As Vince pointed out, that's to a team that had already beaten you. Well, we thought we'd come in here and win. I see what you're getting. You get their confidence back up. Doesn't sound like confidence was their problem going into the Mississippi State game. Maybe out of the Mississippi State game, it is the problem. Let me ask you. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I think there's a different level from a confidence versus intentional focus on what you got to be doing. And I think that's where there was a little bit of a disconnect.
Anything else you heard talking to coaches and scouts over in Nashville this week?
Well, they're all saying that we've become more reliant on Connect. We've become stagnant. They're all talking about making those other guys beat you one-on-one at the basket, make them shoot contested jumps. Other guys being Josiah, Vescovy, Gainey, Meshack. Those guys aren't going to blow by their individual. And then the questioning of, if you hit this team in the mouth, they get on their heels. They get starstruck a little bit. And so every team's going to come out and try to punch them in the mouth from the get-go.
You have an event coming up. Let's go ahead and put up this graphic so people can see this. It's called the Knoxville Summit. Tell people about this.
Yeah, so I was out in an event in Vegas, and Ben Newman is a high-performance coach and does it all around the country. Been blessed to bring a lot of other leaders in town. I'm not really speaking, I'm more emceeing, so you get to hear from some other great speakers like Kara Lawson, Justin Gatlin, Adam Wright over at Pilot. So it's going to be in May in a 2-day event that I really think is going to impact the city in a great way.
All right, very good. Mark Pancratz, hope people can, we'll tell you more about that next week when we got more time, too, how you can sign up and get tickets and that kind of thing. Mark, thank you very much. Appreciate it, buddy. We'll see you next Sunday.
All right, thanks.
All right. When we come back, let's dive deeper into the bracket pads put out by Lenardi, by Palm, by Bracket Matrix, all that stuff. Coming up next, the path to redemption for Tennessee. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine. Boat show deals and specials and rebates and extended warranties. Man, they're still going on down at Madisonville Marine. Get there before March 31st to get a great boat, great price, great service, and all these great deals. Boat show pricing continues at Madisonville Marine. There's no better place to buy a boat. All right, let's remind people of the poll. If we can, right there, it looks like Sweet 16 is still no, second round is the leader.
Wow.
Second round is it? Or it's so far away.
26% for the second round, 41%
for Sweet 16. Okay, so it is Sweet 16. Good
Chuck
deal.
vision.
Keep clicking. Well, you're closer at that angle. All right, keep clicking. Keep clicking the poll and let us know what you think, because we'll be making our predictions later in this show. Let's take a look at bracket talk here. The number 1 seed, I think this one's out the window, but it came down to North Carolina, Tennessee, Arizona. Here's one thing that's interesting. Jerry Palm updated his bracket this morning after our final graphics were made, naturally. But he's got Iowa State jumping all the way to a number 1 seed in the West. He really put a lot of money on that Big 12 champion, maybe literally, that Big 12 tournament, because he's got Iowa State as a number 1. I don't see any way Tennessee gets a number 1 seed at this point, especially when you look at their quad 1 record. Yes, you got a lot of wins, but you got a lot of losses there too. Credit Barnes for playing that many teams, but I don't know how you would get a number 1 out of there. Let's take a look at Joe Lenardi's prediction. All right, here you go. He's got them as a number 2 seed in the Midwest region in Detroit. First games would be in Charlotte. He's got them against St. Peter's. Second round would be Clemson, Colorado State winner. And then once you got to the next region down in Detroit, is that right? Yeah, first round, second round. Yeah, third round. In Detroit, you would play either Creighton, Morehead State, Texas Tech, or Oregon. Creighton, a really good team. That's a team that would be, in terms of the seed lines, it would be Tennessee Creighton. Chuck, let me get your reaction to that bracket.
Oh, I mean, I would like the way that looks. Obviously, 2 years ago, St. Peter's had the magic against Kentucky and pulled that off. But if you look at that bracket, I could see how Tennessee could do some damage there. I mean, it looks like, I mean, who, if you look at that bracket, who scares you that you would be facing in that part of it?
I don't know. Who's better than Mississippi State?
Clemson. They got a really good inside player, and that concerns me.
Anybody with a dominant big.
That's right.
Yeah, Creighton can just get absolutely on fire from the perimeter. Texas Tech is going to be a physical, tough team. Guard play at Oregon actually is, but I do think
Chuck's
it's positive.
point though.
Yeah.
I get Chuck's point that there are worse seeds to be had.
Exactly.
Or worse paths to be had. Okay, go ahead, Vince.
No, I was just going to say there's not the brands there that I think for the regular fan base would say, oh my gosh, I don't want to see them. Clemson versus Barnes, where he coached.
Yeah.
Right. Barnes versus Barnes.
Now, before we flip, don't flip yet, or Chris Lane, don't flip. We'll show you Jerry Palm's projection next, but what I'm going to show you is the one he had last night, because he updated it here recently this morning, and what he's done is he's moved Tennessee to number 2 in the Midwest as well. So both of these guys have Tennessee in the Midwest as the number 2, going to Detroit in a bracket that's led by Purdue. So that's number 1. Now let's take a look at Jerry Palm's prediction, just to keep it different, because look, these guys are really good at predicting the field. That's because it's basically 95% of it's just math. This panel could project the field, literally. But they're not great at guessing which region somebody's going to, where the seeds are going to play. So it makes more sense to play around a little. So let's say, what if his projection from last night is correct and Tennessee's the number 2 seed in the South? Here's what this region would look like. They would play Fairfield, then they would play the winner of Washington State or Northwestern St. John's with Rick Pitino. If you get through that, again, your 3 seed there is Creighton, 6 seed St. Mary's. Jimmy, what do you think of that path?
I like that one better because I think, and when I said Clemson earlier, I was just talking about the upper part of that bracket.
Yeah.
Creighton's a better team.
Yeah.
I don't think any team on that side, on that upper bracket, is as dangerous as Clemson. So I like that bracket more.
Okay.
What you're doing, replace Clemson with Washington State?
Yes.
Is that correct?
I don't like,
Yes.
if it's Rick Pitino, I would not like Rick Barnes versus Rick Pitino, based on that chart I showed you earlier, in terms of who gets to the Sweet 16 and the Final Four. I look for good coaches in here, too, because that would worry me. But
I agree. I might favor that one. St. Mary's is they'll go inside on you, so that might be a little bit of a concern for the post defense.
It'd be almost like St. Mary's is just about as good as Gonzaga, right? So those would be, to me, you would match up against.
Coaching difference, though.
Yeah.
Because you're talking about the Gonzaga versus St. Mary's coach.
yes.
Mark Few.
Mark Few's another one who hasn't had great turn. He's had some good runs, but not great.
Right.
Of course, it's funny. He's not at. He has made Gonzaga a name program, but
Yes, he has.
you know, he's not at North Carolina. I don't know that he would have been better at North Carolina. Just getting nothing but 5 stars, maybe he would. But
He hasn't finished it off
yeah.
with when the expectations were there.
yeah. But in terms of Palm and Lunardi today, they're the same in the Midwest. Purdue and Tennessee 1-2. They're the same in the South. Houston and Marquette. Houston, who got annihilated yesterday in their tournament championship game. The difference is Lunardi has North Carolina #1 in the West and Iowa State #2 in the East. Jerry Palm has Iowa State #1 in the West, North Carolina #2 in the East. I think Jerry Palm's a little extreme on the Iowa State thing. I'm also surprised that Tennessee is not in the South or the East. They're getting bumped to the Midwest. We'll see. I think the East and the South are both still very much in play for Tennessee. Just a guess.
Hey, the big bracket, I want to be on the side with Purdue. I mean, when you're looking at...
You do want to be on the side?
I do. I would rather be in there with Purdue right now than some of these other teams.
Oh, then
Purdue's
UConn.
history?
Right. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because Matt Painter's had a
Somebody would
bad...
have to win in the tournament.
Yeah.
Because you're probably not going to be playing Purdue if Tennessee advances.
Let's hope they're right about Charlotte at the very least for the first.
Right. All right. When we come back, when the Vols get bounced from the tournament, and 67 of the 68 teams do, so don't get mad. All these teams are going to lose except for one. When Tennessee gets ousted, what will the cause of death be? What will our autopsy report say? Why will they lose? We'll discuss that next. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. Before you ever see a water stain on your ceiling, your roof could be leaking. In fact, your roof could be helping to hide the damage. Get a free roof inspection from Daniel and his team this week. It's free. What's to lose? DanielHoodRoofing.com. Visit that website. You'll see testimonials from people all over East Tennessee who have used Daniel's team and been very happy that they did. DanielHoodRoofing.com. All right, take a look at this stat. We touched on this a little bit earlier. Shooting in the last 8 games. All right, Vandy, Missouri, Texas A&M, Auburn, all those February games, Tennessee shot 47, 42, 52, 51%. Then March happens, 36, 35, 37, 30. In fact, how many times have they shot under 38% this year? Only 9 times all year long in 32 games. Well, only happened twice in November, only once in all of December, once in all of January, once in all of February. You played 4 games in March. It happened all 4 games in March. I just find that remarkable and stunning. So I'm just giving you some bumps with numbers as we come back. Here's my question for the group, Chuck, Ryan, and Jimmy. When Tennessee gets the heave-ho, and most of these teams, I'm just playing the odds here, don't get mad. 67 out of 68 teams are going to get the heave-ho. When Tennessee gets the heave-ho, what's the reason? Are we talking about, well, a big, dominant, big man for the other team? Are we talking about bad shooting, just bad shooting? I say that every year. Or are we talking about pressing and puckering up a little bit? Are we talking about something else? Ryan, when the autopsy's done on this team, what's the cause of death going to say?
I think realistically it's going to be more than one of those, but I think the one that everybody's going to be...
Simplify.
Yeah, the one everybody's going to be talking about is the shooting, because I think it's always been the concern about this team. Can't create enough shots aside from Dalton Connect. You know, you can't... Not a good three-point shooting team at times. I think if that trend continues, shooting under 40%, it's hard to ignore that, and that's probably what's going to be the ultimate demise of this team. So I think it's going to go something like that.
I just find it fascinating that you had those sprinkled in, and then in March,
yeah,
every game.
Yeah.
Chuck, what's the reason?
I think the lack of really the great Tennessee defense that we've seen, where you're ranked number 2 and number 3 in the country. And then that just seems to have disappeared. And it's some of your veteran guys that are getting beat on dribble drives. If you can't shore that up in a guard-dominated postseason tournament, you're not going to stick around very long.
To tell you how good they've been on defense this year, as of last night, even after these 2 last games, they're still ranked number 3 in Ken Palm's defensive efficiency. So you've had 2 horrible games, and it still hasn't changed your rating that much. That's how good you were for the first 30 ballpark.
I think their defense is overrated.
Yeah, I've said that.
I'll get you Ken Palm's number.
Yeah. What does he know?
Yeah.
I'm going to say, and it's kind of tied in, but it's going to be a bad three-point shooting game tied to pressing, because these players, I do think they press. I do think they know what Rick Barnes' record is. I agree with that. I think that's a part of it. They want to be the team that breaks the streak. They want to be the team that advances. And so I think that the three-point shooting is going to be, they'll have a game like Mississippi State where they can't hit anything.
Now, here's the thing. I agree. I said that last year. When they lose, we'll be talking about the fact they didn't shoot 30%. I think that's and they hit a couple late that actually got them over 30%. But the problem is, I think that's pretty much the case for 67 of the 68 teams. That's just what basketball is. You're going to go out, you're going to have a night when you don't hit anything, there's a lid on the basket, you go home. So as much as, yes, their shooting has gone south here, can they create shots? Are they too reliant on connect? If this was the best team in the country, I would still say, yeah, it'll be the night they go cold and they'll be out. That's just the way I look at college basketball. It's hard for you to argue that.
Somebody else gets hot. See you around.
Yeah, I mean, it's tournament. It's a tournament sport. That's the way it goes.
Is anybody else a little concerned about a possible disconnect with Connect? About him being put on the bench? About so much about his defense when I see other players also having defensive lapses? I think that could pop up, too. I think there's a little bit of something going on there. I can't quite put my finger on it.
The only thing that's changed for me is in the last 2 or 3 weeks, or the last 2 or 3 games, I should say, it does seem like people are more than willing to say, I don't want it here. You take it, Dalton. We didn't see that this year. We wondered if it was coming. It never came until the last, in my opinion, the last few games you've started to see it. There have been other times where, well, Alabama. At Alabama, he scores 13 points. You're fine. You got points. But
he didn't score a lot at Kentucky.
That's right. Yep. And Josiah Georgia had 20-something. Yeah.
And Ziegler, I think, had 26, too.
Yeah. Vescovy had
11.
Yeah, there were games where he had 11, 12, 15 points.
You can't go from averaging like 80 points a game to struggling to score more than 50.
It's all stopped here in the last couple of weeks, really.
Yep.
And I just find that fascinating. Again, it always goes back to March. Okay. When we come back, were you on Twitter Friday? If so, it was bad enough that we're going to do something we haven't done in years, and that is mean tweets. So come on back. We'll show you what fellow Vol fans and some rival fans had to say about Rick Barnes. We'll have some fun with it. And then we got our predictions for how far Tennessee goes in this tournament. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. If you're in need of a new security system for your home or your business, call VFL JJ Surlis and the team at Safety Systems. They've always taken good care of me, folks. And you'll find their logo on business windows and in yards all over town. SafetySystems.com to learn more. All right, let's remind you of the poll. We want people to keep playing. I know once a lot of people have voted that the numbers don't move as much, but they seem to be shuffling a little. Sweet 16 still the leader there, followed by second round. Don't have as many Elite Eights. We had a lot of Elite Eights a few months ago when I put this thing up here. We had a lot of Elite Eights on the panel a couple weeks ago. We'll see if that is continuing.
Where's your national championship?
Yeah, I didn't put that one on there.
Sweet 16 has gone down. It was 41% a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, I tell you what. I believe he's the best coach in school history. I said that last week. I still do. I think this team is built for a good run. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. But a lot of people out there just look at Rick Barnes and they see some of those numbers that we ran out there earlier today.
Yep.
And boy, when he loses in March, they let go on Twitter. So let's have a look at what we like to call the Rick Barnes haunted March history. All right? A little mean tweet fun for us. So here we go. Just something. All right, tournament Rick Barnes is here. Got it. That's pretty standard. Okay, that's just an easy one. Name the biggest rivalry in sports. I'll start. Rick Barnes versus March. That was pretty good. All right. Rick Barnes in March. It's the I have no idea what I'm doing. That's kind of tough. The dog typing. Next, Rick Barnes every March. The potential fraud warning.
Wow.
Yikes, that's tough. All right, some of these are meaner than others. I left some mean ones out. Smart move by Rick Barnes and company. Tennessee got the March tournament disappointment out of the way early this year.
Lowered expectations.
Ooh, here's one. We talk about Rick Barnes by month. Look at this, Chuck. Rick Barnes against the spread by month since 2005. Ooh.
Oh, my goodness.
Against the spread since 05. That is not a small sample.
I'll take the other side.
Yeah, Rick Barnes starting his inevitable March fade early this year. All right, there you go. We stick with the Simpsons. Rick Barnes in March. I love this one. I'm in and I'm out. There we go.
That's the best one yet.
Yeah, all right. Tennessee making sure Rick Barnes doesn't have the pressure of a #1 seed. There you go. Okay, they knew what they were doing. Another one. Okay, here you go. It's going to be different for Rick Barnes this March. You see, he has one of the 5 best players in the country this time, and they have all these Q1 wins, and you still have to put on the clown mask even if you're saying all that stuff. And then finally, yep, it's that time of year for Rick Barnes. Everybody, all Vol fans are shaking their English mountain spring water. And my thanks to AI for that graphic there, the basketball in a cemetery. All right, that's our Rick Barnes haunted March history. Here, I will say this, though. Have a little fun with that. The number of people on Twitter calling for Rick Barnes' head on Friday.
Yeah.
It was 6 days removed from winning the Southeastern Conference Championship, the second toughest league in the nation this year. It's a bit over the top. They're not paying it. People are like, what are we paying him for? Not tournaments. You're paying him to be clean, to keep the butts in seats, to play a good schedule, and to compete for titles, which he does.
And to bring in revenue. Which he does.
That's it. You know, if people look at it as, well, you're giving this money so the expectations go up. Only if you're an idiot. Did you not look at his resume? Why would you suddenly think a guy who's never been a Final Four magnet can suddenly grab Final Fours left and right? I just think and granted, that's fandom. That happens everywhere. But 6 days after an SEC title,
and outright,
you're calling for his head.
Yeah, and this is the first time since November Tennessee has a 2-game losing streak, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not like you're in a huge slump. The problem with this is pretty good, and you still got time to turn it around.
But he does have to wear it, right? I mean,
yes.
let's be real. He does have to wear this. I think he's a good coach. I think that he's the best. I agree with John. It's the best coach in Tennessee history. But you got to own that you've earned this reputation. It's not just been given to you. No, that's a college football mentality in a college basketball world. That's what people are bringing to the table there.
Right. Yeah, and there's plenty of that.
Yeah.
That's why I didn't understand you calling for him to be fired.
Not the case. The last chapter. It's a bad sign that the history will repeat, but that last chapter has not been written yet. You got to at least give him that. I know no one wants to wait on social media, but you got to see how it plays out.
And that's the problem. That's the problem for him is you can sit there about Houston and say, well, they got bombed. Oh, my gosh, is it going wrong at tournament time? But you don't have, Kelvin Sampson doesn't have that long history of like Barnes does. So there's a shampoo effect, I think, for the fans. All it takes is a little drop of water this time, and all that lather is back up again. That, oh, man, we're going to do this again. Here it goes. So it works against him. All right, when we come back, what Tennessee and NCAA tournament history tell us about the Vols' chances in March. This is some interesting stuff you might not have seen. We'll break this down. Why you want to be UConn. We'll explain that. Then we'll give you our predictions for how far Tennessee will go. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things. Want to build a man cave? What about a home theater room for your family? Then you need to start with home theater seating from Games and Things. With their unbelievable showroom at the corner of Kingston Pike and Lovell Road, you can go in, put your behind in every one of those seats, test them out, and say, yes, this is the one that speaks to my behind. It's the perfect comfort zone for me. Home theater seating, you can't do better than Games and Things. It's where I got mine. It's where I got my last 2 pairs, as a matter of fact. I got mine, and then 10 years later, I replaced them with 2 more. Games and Things, because life should be fun. All right, let's take a look at the poll results. How far will Tennessee go in the NCAA tournament? According to you, 34% say the Sweet 16. 29% of you say the second round. We got 22% saying Final Four. So there are some homers that watch this show.
First round, what are we doing?
We got 3% saying first round. We've also got some haters who watch this show. All right. But Sweet 16 wins, second round. I'm kind of in that same ballpark, but we'll tell you more later. I want to run out some numbers for these guys quickly. Let's talk about, will Tennessee be upset again? Don't worry, I know you can't read all that. But what you got, Tennessee, the red numbers, the red lines, that's the time Tennessee has lost to the lower seed. Some people say higher seed, some people say lower seed. Higher seed to me means you're a 1 or a 2. Lower seed means 10, 11, whatever. Rick Barnes has made 5 tournaments at Tennessee. They've been upset in every single one. 4 lost to a 9, 3 lost to 11, 5 lost to a 12, 2 lost to a 3, 3 lost to 11. Pearl had 2 of those where Louisville beat him. Wichita State, a 7 beat a 2. Jerry Green, all 4 of his tournaments were losses to lower seeded teams. Now Don DeVoe, that poor guy, he faced 4 number 1 seeds and a number 2. He never got ousted by someone that was an upset. But 11 of Tennessee's last 16 NCAA trips, and all 5 of Rick Barnes, you've been ousted by a lower seed.
For the 5, the lower half of the bracket as well,
yeah,
like a 9 through 12. That's awful.
Yeah, that's scary. All right. Next one, let's take a look here. In terms of the last 10 champions, we always talk about offensive and defensive efficiency. You have to be top 25 in both, kind of a stuff that gets you in there. Well, look here. When it comes to the last 10 champions, not Final 4, champions, you got to be really, except for one exception, top 10 in offensive efficiency. UConn is the only team that wasn't in 2014. Tennessee needs to be paying attention to that because they aren't top 10 in offensive efficiency right now either. They're number 28, which is good. For as bad as we've beaten them up today, they're actually good in terms of offensive efficiency on the season.
But that's gone way down.
It has dropped. Yeah. All right. Now let's take a look. I said UConn. Let's look at 8 lost champs. If Tennessee wins the whole tournament, they will be, what, 8? Well, they're 24-8 right now, so they would be 30-8. There are only 3 teams since 2011 who've won the NCAA tournament with 8 losses or more. It was UConn every time. And here's the thing. In 2023, last year, they lost 6 of 8 in a stretch in the regular season. In 2014, they lost their regular season finale 81-48 and then got beat double digits in the Big East tournament. Still won the NCAA tournament. In 2011, they lost 7 of their last 11 to end the regular season, then won the Big East tournament and won the NCAA tournament. You better hope you're following the UConn path. And then I'll also throw out one positive note here for folks. Tennessee's only Elite 8 run came in 2010. That team got annihilated by 29 by Kentucky in the SEC tournament. Then you go in as a 6th seed and make it all the way to the Elite 8. And one note about this team so far, in case you weren't paying attention last night, Tennessee has beaten the ACC tournament champion, the Big Ten tournament champion, and regardless of who wins the SEC tournament championship, Tennessee's beaten both of those teams in the regular season too. And yet you're home after 1 game.
Yeah.
Thoughts on any of that? Any of the history or any of the results?
The bottom half of the bracket thing for me with Barnes is a lot. 4 of the 5 losses being teams that were 9 seeds or below. That's concerning, right? Because I think some of that, you kind of have to do that to yourself a little bit. I don't think necessarily, they just got hot.
When it happens again and again and again.
Yes. That is the part that is the most concerning to me.
And I think in some of those situations, like with Sister Jean, the bracket opens up. The perception is that Tennessee should roll these teams, and they don't. So that even adds to the angst. And
last year, right? Last year the bracket opened up for them as well.
It's just going to show. It shows you how important the draw is. I think the draw is going to be so important for this team because they've run into the Michigans, the Loyolas. They've hit these teams that have been hot. They've got to get lucky and not run into that team this year. It's hard.
Well, the Elite 8 team, the one that made it to the Elite 8, people are like, well, it was a great run. They played 14-seed Ohio in the second round instead of 3-seed Georgetown. But you need those kind of breaks, and you got to take advantage of them. Right. So if you get a Loyola Chicago, whether Kyle Alexander's out or not, you better beat them.
To your last stat, though, everybody's struggling right now. No one looks great. And we see teams, especially away from home, have really cold shooting nights. And so every game's away from home in the NCAA tournament, right? At least neutral sites. So I think this could be a really wild one. And maybe Tennessee's not at... Tennessee is struggling in the same way a lot of other teams are struggling. Rick Barnes just has a history of it.
That's it, and it skews the way you look at everything.
Yeah.
There's no way that doesn't make you more negative looking at things.
Yeah. There was 3 mismatches that same day in the quarterfinals. The top 3 seeds went out for the first time ever.
Yeah, and nobody cares. It didn't matter. Tennessee went out. Doesn't matter. All right. That's the way fans are. All right. When we come back, how far is Tennessee going to go in the tournament? You've given us your take. We'll give you our take. A couple weeks ago, everybody here was like, Elite Eight, Elite Eight, at least Elite Eight. We'll see if that's changed. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by a new member of our Sports Source family this week, Chris Smith Insurance. Want to welcome them in. Chris Smith Insurance, it's a very unusual story. This is a homeowner who felt that his insurance company didn't really have his back when he needed them, so he started his own insurance agency to specifically stand with his customers. Visit csmithagency.com today. Learn more about Chris and his team. I look forward to telling you about them more in the months and years to come. Chris Smith Insurance. It is a different kind of insurance. Not all insurance is equal. Get in touch with these guys this week. All right. We are here. Will, Vince, Ryan, Chuck, Jimmy. I want to get everyone's prediction for which region. Do we all agree a 2 seed?
Yes.
Anybody think there's no chance of a 3, is there?
No, I don't think so.
I think you're too high up on the 2 line.
Some people are wondering if a 1's possible now with everybody.
Yeah, I've been asked that a lot today.
I don't see it, but we all think 2 seed?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Then I want to know, and I'll start with you, Will. Just be very quick here. What region do you think they'll go to? Lenardi and Palm both say Midwest. What region and how far?
I think the Midwest region, because I think Lenardi and Palm have been tipped off because they're supposed to put you in the closest region, and they're not doing that. So I think they've been tipped off. I'll still say Elite Eight. Everyone's struggling exactly the same way Tennessee does right now. They have a lot of ways to win, and if I know these problems exist, I assume Rick Barnes knows these problems exist.
All right, Will West, sticking with the Elite Eight. What are you doing, Vince?
It's so hard to say because I think there's a balance of, all right, do you give someone that's on the 3 or 4 line maybe a bump in regional, and it's really not that regional to be on the, whether it's Midwest or the South. I'll say the South, but I don't think it makes that big of a difference, honestly, and I will say Sweet 16.
Okay. South, 16 for Mr. Ferrara. I'll make it different. I think it could be any of them. I think it's probably South, but just to make it fun, I'll say the East and Boston. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's Carolina.
Oh, you just want to go to Boston.
Yeah. But I'm going to stick with what I said a month ago, Sweet 16. I just based history. I just go history. Ryan.
I'm going to say Midwest, not because those guys are predicting, but I just think that makes sense with the way the seeds are falling. I think they get paired with Purdue probably in the Midwest, and I think they end up in the Sweet 16.
All right, we got 3 Sweet 16s, 1 Elite 8. Chuck Cavaleris, where are they going and how far are they going?
I'll tell you what, I'm going to say Midwest, but I'm sitting there, I was listening to you guys talk, the Barnes history, the neutral side. I'm going to say they get put out in the 2nd round.
Wow, round of 32 for Chuck.
And that's changed since Friday, right? That's a result of the SEC tournament loss?
Well, it's just the way it's trending. And just
you wouldn't have said that Friday, though, is his question.
Well, I think I might. No.
Jimmy.
Midwest, round of 32.
Oh, wow.
Haters.
Round of 32. Would you have said that Friday?
No. I'd have said Sweet 16 Friday.
Are we being too swayed? Here's the danger. Teams lose like this in tournament.
Yeah.
But it's the Rick Barnes factor that is making us be swayed more.
Well, it's that and the warts that I'm saying.
Right. It's Vescovi and James and they do.
I believe they need to bench those guys. I think you need to bench Vescovi.
Well, we were talking earlier. I can see with James and Vescovi to get somebody else in, and I would, but I'd also let them close out a win.
I said earlier, I'm at least changing the rotation and changing up the minutes. I'm not playing Vescovi more than 15 minutes. You've got a first-round game to mess with.
I think it might be better for him if he came off the bench as well.
I think as Mark Pancratz has pointed out, there's a lot of things that he does that helps his team defensively. Now, that wasn't the case. You had a lot of breakdowns in that game. The offense is not just one part of it. Barnes is going to look at the totality of it. So I don't think that'll happen. Maybe some minutes here and there, but in terms of benching, I don't see it.
I wonder if at the end of the season we're not going to look back, not with the reason they lose, but we're not going to look back and say, could Rick Barnes not have done something to get more from Vescovi this year? This is a guy who led the SEC in three-point shots 2 years ago. When he came back, everyone felt good. This is a good thing. We were surprised by Josiah Jordan-James. It was a good thing that Vescovi was coming back. And it's like he doesn't fit in this offense. Was there no way to find him shots?
I think he's got the yips. I mean, he should be a 3-and-D guy. That's what I mean. That's what he's built to do. His game is built to do exactly what they're asking him to do. and he's not able to execute. So I think
I'm
it's the
missing a lot of open threes.
Right.
Yeah.
But if
He's
I'm
not taking
Barnes,
open
I'm going to
threes.
put in a double stack offense to get screens for Connect to get him open in more scoring range.
One other thought on the positive side: SEC teams know Tennessee. They're going to face some teams soon that don't know them as well. They'll fare well against them, I think.
Very good. Thanks to all of you guys. Thanks to you. We'll see you right back here next Sunday. Talk about whatever happens in the tournament with Tennessee. See you then. Thank you.